Why you can't find peace. Jung's dark explanation. Maybe peace isn't missing. Maybe it's hiding in the only place you refuse to look. The part of you you swore you'd never become. You know the feeling. A quiet room, the phone face down. You tell yourself this time, finally, you will rest. But the mind doesn't obey. Thoughts clatter like dishes in the next room. The body hums with an unnamed threat. It isn't trauma you can point to. It isn't an urgent problem. It's a low, chronic vibration in the bones, like a machine you lost the manual for. You breathe. You meditate. You optimize. You stack routines and switch to decaf. And then, in a thin hour of the night, it returns. The heaviness you cannot outwill. The restlessness you cannot outrun. Carl Jung would say, you are not at war with anxiety. You are at war with yourself. The part you call me, the polished one that smiles, performs, and posts, is only the mask useful, necessary, and murderous. Behind it stands your uninvited twin, the shadow. It is made of all the moods, desires, weaknesses, and hungers you rejected to become who you think you are. And it hasn't gone anywhere. Exiled, it learned to speak a different language. It appears as a symptom. It appears in your lovers. It appears in the people that irritate you for no good reason. It appears as a constant, inexplicable unrest. The dark explanation is not that peace is rare. The dark explanation is that you have trained yourself to fear the only conditions under which peace can exist. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It is the presence of wholeness. Wholeness requires the parts of you that embarrass you, threaten you, contradict you, and you have built a life that bans them. Listen closely to the words you don't say, to the small, merciless judgments you carry about yourself, to the old vows made in childhood. I will never be weak like that. I will never be angry like him. I will never be needy like her. Every vow nailed shut a door to a room in your own house. You kept the corridor clean. You closed the blinds. You forgot to ask, who lives in the locked rooms? Who moved into the basement when I declared myself pure? Jung watched this drama unfold in dreams and breakdowns, in nightmares that repeat like parables. He saw it in his own head, through years of visions he carefully did not dismiss as madness. He insisted on a truth the modern world hates to hear. The psyche's not a democracy run by your ego. It is a country of factions and gods. Forces arrive, seize the microphone, and call themselves you. Then they leave and another takes over. You call it mood swings, self-sabotage, bad luck. He called them complexes, feeling-toned bundles of memory, pain, and image that act like independent beings. They possess you. They make the same mistake again and again, just to teach you what you won't learn awake. Think of the last time you overreacted. A trivial comment detonates a week of silence. A small rejection opens a canyon. Where did that intensity come from? From a wound that never found its words. From a fragment of the past that your conscious self refuses, and that therefore must speak in the future. The psyche has fidelity to wholeness. If you exile a part, it will return as fate. If you renounce a desire, it will return as obsession. If you deny a fear, it will return as control. This is the paradox. The more you try to be peaceful, the more violent you become inside. The persona, the face you offer the world, demands conformity to its image. It tightens around you like a uniform you've outgrown. The shadow, crushed beneath, doesn't stay dead. It leaks through the seams. You get brittle. You get suspicious. You get tired. And when you say, I can't find peace, what you mean is, I can't keep the dead from knocking. We live in a culture that loves clean surfaces. We prefer stories where the villain is outside. We have built technologies that drown out silence and flood the hours with 1,000 short bursts of meaninglessness. You can innervate the cortex with enough little pleasures to numb the gut for a while. But the unconscious is not a problem you can scroll past. It is the ocean. And the boat you're in, the curated self, floats only so long before the weather changes. And nothing works. Nothing tastes. Your routines fail to console. You start resenting your own efforts. You begin to suspect that the whole project of becoming better was just a very elegant way to avoid yourself. So here is the opening cut. What if peace isn't something you acquire by making the mind calm, but something that emerges when you stop telling so many lies about what you are? What if the quiet you're hunting lives under the noise of your goodness? What if the restless pulse in your chest is the heartbeat of a stranger who belongs to you? Jung's dark explanation is not a diagnosis. It is a sentence. The conflict you refuse within will appear without. You will call it the state of the world. You will call it politics, chaos, enemies. You will not notice that the faces on your screen are your own face, multiplied. And you will look for peace in external victories, not realizing that you're negotiating with the wrong government. Until you sit with the shadow, peace will be a vacation you can't afford to live in. But if this is true, if the thing that disturbs you is the undiscovered you, and where do you start? Not with a plan, with a question. Who am I when nobody is looking? And what am I afraid I might discover if I truly found out? There is a story Jung liked to tell, though he told it in 100 fragments across patience and parables. A man climbs a mountain to get away from himself. He leaves the city, the work, the lover, the noise. On the summit, there is nothing but sky and rocks and a lake, so still it looks like glass. He kneels to drink and sees a face in the water. He is not alone. The traveler he came to escape has followed him without boots, without pack, without breath. The reflection smiles with the wrong corners. The man recoils. The lake shivers. When it stills again, the face is gone. But the mountain has learned his name, and now, wherever he goes, it whispers it back. We think peace means evacuating conflict zones, quitting the job, changing the diet, turning off the news. And sometimes it helps. But you can't outrun what is inside you. And what is inside you doesn't forgive being ignored. The irony is that the more successful you are at constructing a functional persona, the more trouble you can be in. Because the persona works. It earns. It charms. It keeps invitations coming. Meanwhile, the neglected parts gather power in the shade and practice speaking in other voices. They study your weak spots. They learn the shape of your compassion and take that shape. They learn the tone of your sanity and take that tone. They can even hide inside your virtues. Moral zeal is their favorite costume. This is projection. When something in you is too hot to hold, you see it in someone else's hands. You find anger contemptible, so you meet a million angry people. You're frightened of desire, and every advertisement feels like an assassination attempt. You fear incompetence, and incompetence blooms around you like algae. Jung compared projection to a hook in the unconscious and an eyelet in the world. The two find each other with the precision of fate. We marry our shadows. We vote for our shadows. We fight wars with our shadows and call it geopolitics. And in private, while believing we're making moral stands, we are really just trying to relocate the unbearable into someone else's body. But the world cannot carry your shadow. It will heave it back, soaked and heavy, at the worst time. That's why peace is fragile. You might hold it in your palm for an afternoon, then lose it in a single sentence, a look, a memory. You might live for months in the glasshouse of positivity, then shatter it with a dream that refuses to be interpreted away. Dreams are not random. They are counterweights. When you're inflated, when one part of you swells so big it calls itself the whole dream's kneel on the other end of the seesaw, they bring back the humbling image. They flood you with anxiety when you've acted fearless too long. They send erotic warmth when you've frozen into virtue. They send death when you've forgotten your limits. Listen to the man who never cries and keeps finding himself in funerals. Listen to the woman who speaks for thousands and cannot sleep because a single child's face visits her every night. These are complexes, returning like weather. You don't choose the front that moves in. You choose only whether to read the sky. After World War I, Jung turned inward in a way that frightened his peers. He withdrew from public life and recorded the fantasies and horror that rose in him as if from a myth that had lost its temple. He let himself be seized by images of old men with antlers, serpents circling the world tree, a sun with a black spot in its heart. He did not treat them as nonsense. He treated them as intelligence alien but precise. He painted them. He conversed. He asked them what they wanted. It was a dangerous discipline he called active imagination, a way of letting the unconscious speak in its own language, not through tests and numbers, but through story and symbol. It is not a safe practice. It asks you to step into the theater where the actors are your fears. Why do that? Because the alternative is possession. If you will not meet the God will wear you. Archetypes, the eternal patterns of human experience, live in us like currents. Lover, warrior, mother, father, trickster, sage, orphan, king. They are not hobbies, they seize. The lover can become the addict. The king can become the tyrant. The mother can become the devourer. The sage can become the cynic who will not be surprised. Every archetype has a light that creates and a shadow that feeds. When we refuse their shades, they find other doors. Our politics, our movements, the styles we talk in, the enemies we invent. We call it culture war. Jung would call it what happens when a people loses its myths and the disowned gods flood in through the cracks of technology and fashion. Suspense is the feeling that something approaches. You can't name it, but you feel its magnet. Jung called it enantiodromia, the running of a thing into its opposite. It is why moral purists eventually drown in scandal. It is why utopian projects sprout secret prisons. It is why the self-help obsession with high vibes only concludes with a panic attack. Force any pole too far, and the other pole begins to breathe in the dark. The psyche loves symmetry more than it loves comfort. If you keep turning toward the light, the night grows famous behind you. Peace can't survive this churn if peace is defined as the absence of disturbance. But if peace means a right relation to disturbance, if it means being a citizen of the whole mind, not just the part that wins applause, then the path looks different. It is not a straight line upward. It is not a lifestyle that makes envy go quiet. It is a descent and a conversation. It is a marriage of enemies. Suspense turns into purpose when you understand that the stranger knocking is not here to kill you. It's here to be hired. So we begin to ask different questions. What do my symptoms want? What in me benefits from this anxiety? What oath did I make long ago that this anger is trying to annul? Who am I trying to make proud by staying miserable? And beneath all that, the terrifying one. If I allowed the thing I fear into the room, a longing, a rage, a softness, what would change? Here is the term you might resist. Peace is not calm. Peace is alignment. And alignment is a violent process. We think wholeness means balance, the elegant scales of justice. In Jung's language, wholeness is not a teetering equilibrium, but a union of opposites that burns. We imagine serenity as a spa. Jung imagined it as a crucible. He called the process individuation, the slow reorientation of the personality toward the self, the deeper organizing center of the psyche, which is not the ego's prize, but its boundary. The ego is the captain of a small ship that thinks the ocean is a rumor. The self is the ocean that allows the ship at all. What makes Jung's explanation dark is his insistence that we do not want to be whole. Not really. We want to be liked. We want to be right. We want to be untroubled by what offends our taste or threatens our standing. And the unconscious, loyal to the totality, conspires against our comfort. It sends friction. It summons contradiction. It invites characters we would never cast in our autobiographical movie. That is the price of approaching the self. The roles you loved dissolve. A more demanding script appears. If you are a thinker, you will be seduced by irrational images. If you are practical, you will be haunted by dreams that make you late. If you pride yourself on compassion, you will meet the part that refuses. If you champion discipline, you will encounter the child you can't control. Individuation keeps putting a new opposite in your hands until you stop identifying with one side and begin to experience the third thing Jung prized, the transcendent function, the mysterious synthesis that appears when you hold two opposites without forcing a victory. It isn't compromise. It isn't 50% of each. It is a new pattern that neither side could invent alone, like a bridge that was not there until it was. This is where love becomes strange. The figures we love are not people. They are portals into what we deny. The anima in men, the animus in women. The inner contrasexual soul image lies in us as a bridge to the unconscious. It surfaces in infatuation and fury. It makes us say, I don't know why I want them, or I don't know why I hate them. We mistake the person for the God behind them. We entrust them with parts of our own life we never claimed. Then we demand they keep performing the miracle. When they fail, as they must, we feel robbed. If you cannot find peace and love, perhaps it is because you gave someone else custody of your interior. Jung's prescription was not romance, but relation. To meet the anima or animus in oneself, to converse in dreams and drawings, to court the energy they carry, instead of pursuing its avatar with a legal contract and a vow to never change. This doesn't mean solitude. It means not making others bear what you refuse. The more you withdraw your projections, the more your relationships become between actual people. The fewer archetypes you cast on the street, the less chaotic the city becomes. Peace gently blooms where fantasy has done its detox. In that clarity, you can finally suffer your real losses instead of the 1,000 imaginary ones. Synchronicity arrives here too, and not as magic trick, but as a felt click between the inner and the outer. You dream of a fox. The next day, a fox crosses your path in the city. You dwell on forgiveness. Your estranged brother calls. You draw a circle with a cross in it for no reason. Later, you read that monks used it for centuries to image the world. Skeptics snort. Jung wasn't asking for superstition, only attention. He argued that meaning has its own kind of causality. When the inner world is constellated, when the self is stirring, the outer world rhymes. Not because you are manifesting reality like a magician, but because you are finally listening to the dimension that was always speaking. Peace, then, is not numbness. It is the ease that comes when your days and nights speak the same language. But do not mistake ease for safety. To integrate the shadow is to admit into your life forces you cannot domesticate. In our era, the reigning archetype is the trickster disguised as the algorithm. It offers endless novelty that slips past the gatekeeper before the older gods can wake. The trickster breaks structures so that the neglected can play. He also steals your time and sells it back to you at a markup. To approach peace now requires a more ferocious responsibility than before. You must build rituals where there is no temple, enforce Sabbaths where there is no priest, and practice memory in an economy designed to erase it. Why can't I find peace? Jung would ask you to answer without flattery. Because finding peace would force a discovery that breaks the strategy that kept you beloved. Because your grief, if you let it through, would drown the career that carries your name. Because your anger, if you gave it its proper job, would end the agreement you made with your childhood that you would never be like them. Because your desire, if you let it live, would cost you the community that celebrates your denial. We don't fail at peace. We avoid the bill. And yet, as the self stirs, it sends you help disguised as errors. You picked the wrong city and find the right teacher. You say yes from fear and meet a friend that pulls you toward truth. You break down in a place where breakdowns are seen, then call it coincidence, because grace embarrasses the ego. The deeper view rearranges blame. You stop narrating your life as a list of interruptions of your plans. You start asking what the plan was for you, the one you were born into, the pattern that keeps trying to unfold despite your best efforts to be someone else. Peace begins to resemble a deep river under a night sky. The surface has wind. The current is quiet. You don't control the night. You float. You steer with small strokes. You listen. When you hit the bank of rage, you ask it to show you where the boundaries should be, not to dissolve it in moral glow. When you encounter the inlet of sorrow, you stop. You don't make content. You let your chest open. You keep the vigil. It turns out the things you thought were the enemies of peace were the conditions of it all along. Intensity, accountability, devotion, limit. The ego wanted relief. The self offers coherence. If this feels heavier than you'd hoped, good. Peace that can't carry weight isn't peace. It's a costume. We are animals that remember the future. We fear not just death, but the loss of a story. That fear keeps us civilized and keeps us sick. It's why our smiles wear down first. It's why the holidays feel like rehearsals for a play we don't believe in anymore. It's why when we think of stopping, a tremor starts in the hands. To live at all is to live in tension, and every culture decides where to hang the rope. In ours, it is hung between speed and image. You can dangle there for years, legs kicking, insisting this is peace, because it's what everyone else is doing. Jung asks for something impolite. He asks you to come down and feel your weight. He asks you to take your place in a line of ancestors who are not clean and not clever and not optimized, and somehow knew how to bury their people with more dignity than we bring to breakfast. He asks you to grieve. Most of the peace we seek is just grief we refuse. The modern person is a museum of unopened rooms labeled later. Later, I will mourn. Later, I will stop performing love and start feeling it. Later, I will tell the truth. Later becomes an idol and breaks our back. When you open grief, it does not drown you. It trenches and leaves you clearer. Grief is shadow water. It carries the parts you abandoned back toward shore. It washes the persona's makeup into rivers down your cheeks. It is not pretty. It is honest. And in honesty, an old word returns: soul. Not the cartoon soul that floats above a cloud. The human depth that registers beauty and suffering and refuses to pretend they are separate species. Jung's work, in the end, is soul work. It turns phobia into curiosity. It turns symptom into symbol. It turns a life you manage into a life you marry. You'll still make coffee. You'll still answer emails. But something like a vow will have been taken with the stranger downstairs. You'll go to sleep with a notebook near the bed. In the morning, when an image lingers the house with one room dark, the dog that speaks, the flood that never rises above the ankles, you will not Google it for meanings like a thief. You will write and ask, what do you want? You will wait. In the quiet, you will hear it a wordless pressure, a memory, a wish you did not authorize but recognize. You will not obey every impulse. You will not surrender your ethics to the ID, but you will stop pretending peace can be found by ignoring how you actually feel. You'll also stop turning your shadow into a brand. The instinct to confess and monetize is a new possession. Beware it. The shadow deserves a sanctum, not a stage. Tell one friend. Tell a therapist. Tell the page. Tell the forest. The world does not need to see you bleed to validate that you have a wound. Ritual does the opposite of performance. It seals what it opens. There is another weight to bear, the collective shadow. The last century taught Jung that when individuals refuse their inner work, nations hallucinate. The unowned anger becomes tyranny. The unwound envy becomes ideology. The unwound fear becomes the need to annihilate strangers who remind us of ourselves. If you cannot find peace, ask also, what era is living through me? Am I possessed by a pattern older than my family, older than my politics? When you feel the righteous flood begin, when outrage pounds the table, pause and ask, who's speaking? Is it my grief? Or is it a God that wants worship in blood? This is not a call to apathy. It is a call to conscious action, the kind that sacrifices the thrill of purity for the long labor of actually healing something. You will not be perfect. The shadow integrates in seasons, not in a weekend. You will slip back into the mask because it works. You will avoid the conversation because it risks the marriage you love, the job that keeps the house warm, the reputation that pays the bills. Fine. Be human. But keep the appointment with yourself you made when you are most honest. 10 minutes at the edge of sleep. A walk without headphones. A question murmured into your chest. What do I keep banishing that is already part of me? Then small acts of protection for the new life you're growing. You set boundaries, not as punishment, but as architecture. You tell the truth, and not the dramatic kind, the kind that returns you to yourself in tiny straight lines. You practice not knowing, which is the soul's native posture. Then comes an evening when the light goes gold, in the kitchen for no reason. The sink is full. The floor is messy with shoes. You notice the quiet in the noisy room. You aren't happy. You aren't sad. You aren't measuring. You're present. The shadow isn't gone. It's nearby, in the chair, looking at you with something like respect. Peace is not a victory banner. It is a companionship with what you feared would ruin you. It is a readiness to be interrupted not by crisis, but by meaning. We fear destiny because we equate it with constraint. Jung uses destiny in a stranger way, the pattern that wants to live through you, not the plan you impose. The times you listened to it, you felt the rightness even as you paid. The times you ignored it, you felt the corrosion even as you won. Peace grows where destiny and decision finally shake hands. What breaks a person is not tragedy. It's the insistence on a life that never belonged to them. Are you willing to be upset in the right direction? To be broken open so the particular you that the world is missing can finally breathe? Then perhaps peace will stop being a prize and begin being a climate that follows you, even into hard rooms. If you've followed the thread this far, you may feel a tenderness that is not soft, a gravity that doesn't push you down but holds you in place. The dark explanation was not a verdict. It was an introduction. You are not peaceful because you are not yet gathered. You are scattered across the decades, serving old gods with the wages of your present life. You are missing because you abandoned certain names you were given in the rooms where you first learned the word no. And now the past sends invoices to your sleep. The question is not how to stop the invoices. It's how to invite the creditor to the table and find out what the debt is for. Maybe it isn't a debt at all. Maybe it is a seed that got shelved when the weather turned bad. The unconscious is slow. It waits like a tree waits. It knows that most of our cleverness is just fear that can speak grammar. It knows that most of our outrage is just grief that forgot its own source. It doesn't punish. It repeats. It repeats until repetition becomes conversation, and conversation changes the root. You can start in ways so small, your ego will complain they aren't spiritual enough. Keep a dream book by the bed and treat its pages like a church. Make something with your hands that does not add to your value in the market. When your partner becomes a monster in your mind, write a list of what you are attributing to them and ask which items belong to the basement where your childhood lives. When you feel contempt rise for a stranger, pause and test. What part of me just knocked? What cast of my own face did I project onto theirs? Withdraw one projection a week. That's alchemy. Feed yourself myth, not as escape, but as map. Notice how the hero always discovers the treasure guarded by the dragon on the path he refused. Notice how the wise old woman isn't the mother he wants, but the guide he needs. Notice how the trickster ruins banquet after banquet, so that a feast worthy of souls can be set. These are not stories for children. They are instructions that modernity hid in cartoons and forgot to tell you were true. When no ritual comes to claim your pain, you will need to midwife yourself with the old songs. Sing them quietly in your kitchen. Let the kettle make a hymn of water as it boils. You will fail, of course. You will forget. You will wake up lost, call it doom, and doom scroll until your thumb hurts. Then the smallest miracle. You remember a symbol from last night, a crow eating a ring, a door in the floor, a train that shudders and never leaves the station. You close your eyes for 15 seconds in a bathroom stall and ask it what it wants. It doesn't tell you in words. It drops a feeling in your stomach like a pebble in a lake. That is the self saying, I'm still here. Return. You rinse your face. You walk back to your desk and you answer one email like it is a sacrament. Peace, again, is not a mood. It is the ritual of returning. Jung would warn you about inflation, the trap that waits when you taste the power of the unconscious and decide it makes you special. It doesn't. The archetypes do not confer status. They confer responsibility. When you carry more soul, the room gets brighter and the shadows sharpen. People come to you with their hurts. You are tempted to fix them. Don't. Bear witness without theft. Refuse to use other people's wounds as a source of identity. If you want to help, do your work and become a person whose near presence makes projection less sticky. In that field, others remember their own names. There will be days when the old life calls with the voice of a lullaby. The mask, the speed, the heat of judgment, the diet of glittering outrage. It promises simplicity. It offers the powerful sleep of belonging to a team. That isn't peace. That's anesthesia. You don't have to renounce the world. You have to re-enter it with eyes that won't be bribed. You have to keep cleaning the mirror where your shadow sits, so that when it reaches for you, you know whose hand you are holding. And one morning, without ceremony, you will find a pocket of quiet while washing a cup. The cup is chipped. Your fingers know the chip the way your tongue knows the edge of a missing tooth. Sun touches the counter. You feel the shape of your life around you, a little flawed, a little holy. The voice that used to hiss that you are behind will try again. You'll hear it and smile like at an old trick. Behind it, something else moves. Not a command, a companionship. Not a rush, a depth. You set the cup down. You breathe and do not perform the breath. There is nothing to post. There is not even anything to say. There is only the simple, frightening fact that you are here with all of you, and all of you is not yet at war. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.